Either we are alone in this world or we are not. Both are equally terrifying. Questions always arise. Why do we believe in supernatural, gods, demigods, titans, ghosts, and UFOs? Is it that we as humans are conditioned to believe in higher power or something much more powerful than us? Is it our fears which have us believe in all of this? Or maybe, just maybe, it exists to control humanity? There are a million questions and no one true answer. In today's episode, perhaps Ben, the UFO guy, can either draw our attention towards an answer or maybe get us more confused. My name is Faizan Ali and you're watching Not So Casual Talk. Now, I've known you for almost 5 years plus.
I know, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's been crazy. And as far as I know, and I'm sure like even before that, you've always been into supernatural, UFO, conspiracy theories and whatnot. I'm guessing almost plus 10 years you've been into this kind of a shit show. What brought you into this? And do you actually believe in all of this?
I love that question. Well, what got me into it, one, was I'm a documentary fan. I've always loved documentaries. I started watching like World War II documentaries. My dad's a veteran, so I started doing that when I was a kid. And then my family was very, very religious. And when I was about 16, 17, I broke off from all that, went hardcore, hateful atheist. And then from that, I had some experiences in my life that just made me question my reality. And so that's what got me digging into what all is out there, starting with religion, starting with spirituality, because that's where I was the most opposed. So I started with spirituality, started reading more and realizing, well, maybe there is something to this. Maybe it's not what I've been told, but maybe there is something to this spirituality and you know, higher power. So that's what got me started on the journey. And then from there, I started watching every UFO documentary I could get my hands on, every show, you know, Ancient Aliens, you know, all that stuff. And so that got me really into it. And then from there, I started questioning that narrative and that was being put out. And so now I will say this. I was a firm believer in aliens, that aliens signed a treaty with Eisenhower and that, you know, that they're abducting people and cattle mutilations. And now that I've dug into these people that have been saying this, I am more skeptical of that than I ever have been because of the people that have been saying it. When you start digging around, you realize there's a lot more fuckery than fact. And so that's where I started saying, well, if they're lying about one or two things, what else are they lying about? And does that mean the entire UFO narrative and alien narrative is a lie? And then why would that be a lie? And then I came up with this whole theory about the government utilized that to cover up for technology that they're testing and right in front of us.
I think this is something that we raised in your previous podcast when I was invited on as a guest on your podcast as well. I raised the same question that, you know, like how all of a sudden it just pops out of nowhere and then it just dissolves. Like nobody's talking about UFO and then suddenly something happens when it comes to politics and we are all talking about UFOs and everything. Why?
Yeah,
so all of
exactly.
these raise questions
Why?
for sure.
I always ask, why now?
Yeah, why not? Also, one thing that I've always noticed is that, you know, like people are always like trying to compare when it comes to religion and spiritual thoughts, whether it is you can take it like aliens or not, or Bigfoot or whatever that is, you know, and people are always relating sometimes, for example, like Bigfoot with religion as well, like certain certain traditions, they pray towards Bigfoots or animals like this, which we haven't seen, or we have a hypothetical belief that, you know, these creatures exist. And then we have some scriptures that we find from ancient times, and then we start saying that, you know, okay, maybe it was their religion, but we are not sure whether it was their religion or whether it was something that existed back then, but it is extinct now, and people actually saw them, and then it was there. So it has always conflicted me that, like, whenever we are comparing religion with superstitious thoughts and like UFOs and aliens and whatnot. Like, for example, even Mayans, we believe that, like, they saw aliens and that's why they saw scriptures of them and whatnot. There's always a question, which came first?
Yeah.
Like whether religion was first or whether the aliens or the supernatural stuff was first.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
if you can always question whether, like, okay, if the religion was first, then maybe people took this from religion and then their imagination went wild and everything went haywire, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
if this thing was first, then maybe this became the subject for our religious beliefs. What do you think?
Yeah, something I say all the time is based on let's take the Sumerians, right?
Yeah.
Sumerians were one of the earliest known civilizations with some of the earliest writings that we have. Their beliefs are that they are not from this planet, that they were brought here, seeded here by the Anunnaki. And that's where all that comes from, if I'm not mistaken, which tends to happen. But, excuse me. Pardon me. But my question always is, where did they get the imagination? Now we have cultural media that's put in for a long time. We have movies, we have stories, fictional tales. They're known to be fictional. They're intentionally fictional. But in ancient times, we don't seem to have a reference for fictional tales being told. We have stories, oral traditions that are passed down, but it's assumed that it came from some form of inspiration. And most of the time, it was things they saw in their world. So when they're talking about aliens and giants and titans, and crazy things, magic and all these crazy things that we can't contemplate, we can't, today, where did they get the imagination for it? And so I wonder, like you just said, how much of it is real? How much of it did they pull from their real life, the real environment that they lived in, and how much of it was just imagination? But then it makes you wonder again, like I said, like, where did they get the imagination for it? Where did they get the imagination? Let's talk about the Mayans, the fact that you mentioned them. How did they come up with a calendar that went all the way to 2012? How were they able to, in carvings and stuff, how were they able to roughly depict the solar system? How were they able to do all that if it wasn't for some form of intervention, whether it was alien or maybe the other one is there was some form of cataclysm that happened that a very, very advanced form of humans resided on the planet along with these hunter-gatherers that kind of went underground during this massive cataclysm and then emerged with all this knowledge, traveled around the planet, giving that knowledge to hunter-gatherers, which could explain, as people like Graham Hancock say, it could explain the giant leap in the knowledge of agriculture and architecture and all these things. Why is it that in ancient Egypt, the oldest architecture is the most precise, not the newer stuff, the oldest? Yeah. As it gets more recent, it gets worse. So it's very interesting. That's the whole thing, is we don't know, and anybody who claims to know, I'm very skeptical of. But that's the whole thing. I heard a great quote, which was trying to figure out, who these people were and what the past was, humanity's origins. It's like having a puzzle where you're missing 90% of the pieces. You're trying to put together a picture that we have no idea about, and we find these little fragments of pieces and clues, little breadcrumbs that lead to these, and people interpret the data differently. So yeah, I don't know, but it's fascinating to think about.
Another thing that I always contemplate about is that whether this whole theory of caveman era and all that is real or not, because I feel like, like the reason why we found those scriptures and that kind of era, so to say, is probably because that was like a very small area where they were inhabited. and maybe they the large part of the society which was much advanced already existed, but they were covering on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
And because maybe there's just an opinion, maybe we as a much more advanced nation, we are from those people who were advanced back then. Because if you see like how the society has progressed over the years, and if you see the development that has gone through, advancement is becoming more and more faster. But if you see from caveman to maybe like Stone Age, the advancement was so slow. Like we're talking about thousands of years, maybe.
Yeah.
Right. And then we think that, like really from being a caveman to having like a wheel, you need 1,000 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because, you have two very different types of people, right? And obviously, again, we don't know who they were really. We just have fragments that kind of help us put together what we believe they were. But what makes me wonder is like, when you're dealing with an ancient civilization that even as advanced as they were, let's say they were, they're not going to have plastic, that like we do. Assuming. My thought is that they moved at the pace of natural technology, meaning that the world has its own type of advanced way of the way it works, right? We still don't understand the world that we live in fully based on our limited senses and all that. So what if you have an ancient people that are more in tune with that natural energy, and therefore they can use, instead of needing a crane, they can use the power of their brain, and they can levitate through vibration and frequency. Now, they're not going to be able to develop new forms of vibration and frequencies, from what I understand, based, back then, simply because they didn't have external technology to manipulate it. They were simply utilizing what they had around them, is my thinking. So that being said, it could be that, now the reason why our technology advances so fast is we're constantly innovating new materials. We're always innovating new methods of doing something. Whereas in the ancient world, it could have been a matter of, here's what they had available to them in the natural world, and that's it. There was no progressing further than that. It was simply mastering those things, and it was more of a natural pace. So I wonder if it's simply because they didn't have external energy is why they weren't able to innovate the way we were. And part of the downside of innovating like we do externally with our gadgets and our gizmos is that we've completely stripped the human aspect of technology out of it. Aside from using our brain to innovate, it's all external gadgets. And so I wonder if that's the difference between the advancement, is like we're advanced in our toys, but they were advanced in their brains and their interaction with the world and the universe. I don't know. I mean, it's makes me wonder.
Could be. But then there's, this is something that I'm thinking, that shouldn't we be able to predict that with the technology that we have with like a CT scan and whatnot, like how much brain, like even the theory that, we use like 20% of our brain, there's a conspiracy theory about that. You know that?
Yeah, I had a neurosurgeon, a brain guy, that told me that that's actually not true.
Yeah. Even the statement itself, people perceive it wrong. What he said is that the 20% of the brain is the process of the 20% of the brain is something that we can predict, that we might know.
Yeah.
So the 80% we don't even know. It's not that the brain doesn't utilize 80%.
Yes.
It's something that we don't know.
Exactly.
So maybe we use 100% of our brain, So
yeah. Well, and think about like some of these things, which I'm on the fence about as far as whether they're real, is remote viewing, astral projection, things like this. These are aspects of the brain that, when you look at, I love the parallels between remote viewing and astral projection and psychedelic trips. The parallels between a spiritual experience and a psychedelic experience is uncanny. You have, DMT, dimethyltryptamine. It's produced endogenously in the brain. They found it produced in the pineal gland. They found it, now they seem to believe that it's produced in certain muscle tissue. So there's this whole idea that DMT, which is an incredibly psychedelic drug, could have a lot to do with how humans perceive day-to-day reality. And if that's the case, and we have this drug inside our body that can, what seems to project our consciousness somewhere else, then that kind of makes me think, well,
what is real?
What is real? And then on top of that also, I mean, you have, on top of the fact that we don't understand our full brain, what aspects of the brain are being utilized there? Are there doorways? Are there gateways? Are there mechanisms in the brain that get unlocked under trances and meditation? You hear ancient cultures. In fact, one of the first episodes I did on your show, one of your shows, was talking about ancient cultures and their kind of some of their methods of like spirituality. So like some of these monks that can seem to levitate. Some of the monks that they, all kinds of crazy things. There's all kinds of crazy things in ancient, not even ancient cultures, just religious, or I shouldn't say religious, spiritual groups that dedicate their lives to trying to connect to something, whatever, I don't know what it is, a higher power, a different dimension, whatever. So is that a part of the brain that we don't understand? And so does that mean that astral projection is real, but it's not provable? Does that mean that remote viewing is real, but we can't prove it? It looks like a card trick. Somebody going, I see a tree. And then somebody's like, oh, it's a tree. So I just wonder, like, does it get lost in our gimmicky society that we have now where everybody's got a thing? Everybody's got a sideshow in Vegas. So is it one of those things that we're so skeptical that we just don't believe, and belief is kind of part of the engine that makes all these things work, and that's lacking? I don't know, man. I mean, it makes me wonder, like, how much of our brain and what we don't understand actually plays a part in what we would perceive as magic, superpowers.
I think some of it is natural, and some of it is, when I say natural, I mean like naturally existing in our daily life. It's just that the intensity of it is probably so low that we don't feel it. For example, what you're talking about, this, are you familiar with the runner's high?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm not a runner. I've never experienced. I'm just saying I'm aware of it. I've read about it.
So even in that case, I feel like sometimes when you hit that runner's high, it's just that your focus becomes so much dedicated towards that one maybe goal, or your destination or something, like that. Your focus becomes completely dedicated towards it, and you can't see anything else, and your whole body responds towards it. Even in you look at adrenaline, right? Like when you are in a fight or something. Normally, if the first interaction, probably you will have that fight or flee kind mode,
fight or flight.
Yeah, but once you go over that phase, when you are in the fight, actually, that's when you hit the adrenaline, and that is the point where you don't know like what's going on. You just have this one target or one objective, and your whole focus is towards that. And a lot of times when it is not usual, for example, like when we're talking about contact sports, we're talking about army, those are the people who are conditioned to know what's going on in that phase. But when we're talking about general people, normal people like you and me, we don't fight every day. I mean, I used to, but not anymore. But if right now, if I am put in a position where suddenly I'm fighting somebody, I would probably won't have that kind of phase which I used to have when I was doing professional fighting. So in that way, I think like the adrenaline will be playing so much that it will put me in that zone, and I feel like that's something that our body produces to put us in that zone, maybe, you know.
Yep. Well, think about that. You touched on it right there, which was when I think you're talking about adrenal glands and adrenaline and all that, right? So when you have someone that is not familiar with being in that state, it is overwhelming, uncontrollable. They're shaky. They can't articulate. Some people cry. Some people scream. It's this rise in almost uncontrollable impulses.
Yeah.
But when you get somebody, like you were talking about fighting, that is trained to be in that state of adrenaline, trained.
Yeah.
They're in there regularly. They're used to that state. They start to be able to navigate in that state in a way that now becomes conducive. It's a tool. It is a performance enhancer, as opposed to someone else an amateur who's not. It can be debilitating. That very much so, I think, is what we're dealing with when we come to natural energies in the ancient world. You had people that lived in nothing but, and I know it sounds stupid to say this because we live in the natural world now, but the difference is we are literally pulled, our senses, our every being is pulled away from that natural world in almost every way you can imagine, right? From being distracted by our phones to having ads everywhere, sounds, artificial sounds, all these things. It's all distractions. Imagine none of that, where all you have is the sky and the earth and you. And then all you're doing is there's a great, I can't remember who said it. Oh, it's Randall Carlson. If you don't know who Randall Carlson is, great guy, Younger Dryas researcher, you got to look into him. Anyways, he has a great thing that he says. He says, imagine being these people, these ancient people, where you go to bed every night looking at a sky with zero light pollution. Zero. There are people that live today in cities that have never seen the stars in their city. They go to bed every night not being able to see the sky. And it's, most of us can't even see it in its actual glory, the way it should be, seen from like a high elevation, zero light pollution. So imagine being a people where that is your regular life. Your daily life is just living in this world and trying to figure out, what is that? What is this? And these natural energies. And then you put meditation in there. You put focus in there. And now to me, I think people could truly have learned how to master some of these natural energies that we are using science to find, like frequency, vibration, things like that it took somebody in a lab playing with a magnet to figure out, through frequency, we can levitate this. Whereas maybe they were able to do that in the ancient world without a lab.
And then we forgot about it.
Or it was destroyed in some way. As again, if you look at the evidence seems to show that there was a multitude of cataclysms that took place that could have wiped out nearly every life form on the planet. And I'm not just talking about the dinosaurs, I'm talking about much, much sooner, where it could have dropped the human race down to a few thousand people. And if those few thousand people were a scattering of hunter-gatherers and people that understood natural energy, you put those two together, and now all of a sudden you have a hunter-gatherer society that is now, all of a sudden they're practicing architecture. All of a sudden they're practicing agriculture. All of a sudden they're practicing all these things that they didn't know a month before. So I don't know, but it is fascinating. But the fact that you mentioned adrenaline and how there's two different ways that people navigate that space. And there are professionals that use it as a tool to benefit them. And there's people that when they get an adrenaline hit, they freak out, and they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
We've all seen those guys, those dudes that get an adrenaline spike and they just start swinging at anything and everything. They're pissed off. They're yelling. They're screaming. There's no control. There's no direction. It's just pure impulse.
Yeah.
And so again, the difference is, well, that's the same drug that's working in this guy, but this guy is an assassin, you know, and what's the difference? Controlled destruction. You know, this guy's using it as a tool. He's learned how to wield that drug, and then this other guy is just letting it course freely through him, and with zero training. So I think that's part of it right there. Is It could be some of that.
What if, you know, like what you talked about, the charismatic events, charismatic events. What if, like, the first people, we also discussed that first people were probably seeded. What if the cavemen were seeded, and then they realized, like, you know, like it's taking too long for them to grow up.
Yeah.
They destroyed them, put in new people, seeded new people, and then realized like it is taking too long as well, destroyed them all. And then when we came in, we are much more advanced. So you can see like how humans have been brought up more advanced at every stage.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's
just
kind
a
of
theory.
that's actually kind of in the line of what they say, you know, again, going back to the Sumerian texts, if you deal with what they're talking about, is they're talking about the Anunnaki, which was like some spacefaring race, came down and was like in need of gold for their atmosphere, and they came down to Earth that had a plethora of gold, and so they start mining that, but then they don't have enough of a workforce to do so, so they see these primates on Earth, and they genetically modify them to become what we would perceive as early man, and then they enslave them, and then what happens there is like the offspring of the Anunnaki fall in love with humans, start mating with them, and now you have a whole new breed of humans. And then you have the whole stories of the flood thing, which is exactly what you said, which is them wiping out the work that they did, and potentially either, like you said, introducing a new set of humanity, or just some of humanity living through that, and then emerging out of that with some knowledge that they passed on. I mean, look, the truth is anything's possible. I mean, the more we dig into Graham Hancock, I'm a big fan of his. Something he says all the time is shit just keeps getting older. And as we keep digging and excavating into the earth, we find more and more things that point to an alternate storyline of humanity's actual origins. And it's not only getting older, but it's getting more and more diverse. They're always finding new species of humans, you know, all these things. And so I wonder how much of, I mean, really, it's just guesses, educated guesses as to what, you know, everybody says, oh, we found this, so this must be the last of what we know of humanity. You know, again, going back to the earliest writings, 6,000 years, that's what people thought as old as humans were, was 6,000 years. And now we know it's up to 300,000 years old, if not up to 1 million years old, that humans have been on this earth, some form of humans. And as we get older, like the pyramids, I wonder, are they going to start to find more and more advanced humans as they get older? You know, are they going to find these, I don't know, these strange specimens of early man that seem to be more advanced in some way? I don't know how, you know, I don't know what, but it makes me wonder, like, something I brought up before is there's all these theories about, you know, maybe that we came from Mars, right? I don't know if you've heard these.
Yeah.
But there's theories that, you know, oh, there was a nuclear blast on Mars because of the xenon-29 that was left over, which is a compound that's only left from nuclear blasts, and that, you know, perhaps we came from Mars after some climate, you know, catastrophe. And so that's where we come from. And my question always is, well, we haven't even started to dig in Mars. We've never excavated it. So how different would our history look if we'd never excavated Earth? If we never dug in, never found the pyramids, never found any of these architectures, these structures, these relics, any of the writings, how different would our past look compared to now? And how different is our knowledge of maybe where we come from? I don't know. If we start digging on Mars.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And then the Amazon, dude, you go into the Amazon, you realize, like, for obvious reasons, you don't want to go digging through the Amazon because it's basically the last rainforest. But what they found through LiDAR is they seem to find these mega complexes in the Amazon that seem to have resided there. There's theories that the whole Amazon forest was a man-made forest that took off. And so again, you know, there's still parts of Earth that we haven't excavated that could potentially even expand further our current understanding of where humans come from. So
And we haven't even touched the seas and oceans.
Dude, 80% of it's unexplored.
Yeah.
You know, it's wild. It's really wild because we have these. Again, I'm very skeptical of anybody who claims that they know. You know, I know it's this. You know, because it's like, again, we barely understand the nature of reality. We don't even understand consciousness, our own just thing. We don't even have a handle on that, let alone everything that we're in. You know, this giant, whatever the fuck it is, this stew that we're in. And, you know, I love theories. Like, you know, there's this great diagram. It shows like a snow globe, but in the snow globe is the Earth as a flat plane, not giving credence to the flat Earth. People don't freak out, but that you have Earth as a flat plane with the oceans underneath that swoop around and then create the stars that we see. So it's like a never-ending loop that we're in. You know, you go down, you end up, and you go up, you end up down. And I find all that fascinating because even though it's wild, it's a wild thought, we just really don't know what's out there. I mean, what we've been told about space, do we really know? You know, what we've been told about the universe, do we really know? What we've been told about Earth and energy, and do we really know? That's what keeps me in this constant state of I don't fucking know. Because every time I turn around, there's a complete negating of what we previously understood that gives way to a new understanding that is now accepted as truth. So it's like, man, I'm just reluctant to put my fist down on any one thing because it always seems to be that as time goes on, those things are proven to be maybe not false, but not enough. You know, they didn't look into it deeper, or they didn't have the technology to look into it the way that they should have. And so I don't know. I think 100 years from now, our understanding of us and the world that we live in is going to be dramatically different than it is right now.
There's always truth to it, right? I mean, to any theory. There's always truth to any theory. It's just that I feel like we touch the surface of it and then we start predicting. Because when we touch the surface, we know about like maybe 0.0001% of the truth. And then we take it and then we start theorizing on top of that. And then we try to scratch as much information as much we can. But of course, when it comes to science, when it comes to our environment, this world in general, we don't know a lot of it. But we have theories based on certain things. Like, I mean, we take mathematics like 2 + 2, which is a fact, right? You can't change that. But when you come towards scientific theories, you have like one prediction, but then on top of that, you have to use your mathematical analysis and whatnot to predict what can be. But when it comes to the world, it's not just plain maths. We are not living in 2D. There's so much more to it. Yeah,
exactly. So, there's. I mean, I say this all the time. There is magic out there, and magic is simply classified as anything we don't understand. Because how else do you classify it? I said this before, I'm a cannabis advocate.
Yeah.
And I've said for a long time, yes, I've said for a long time that there are aspects to cannabis that we do not understand as humans, that we have not discovered. We don't know what they do. So the only way we can describe it is there is magic in cannabis when you have the whole plant put together. That when you start to extrapolate and you start to extract these things out of it, even though each piece has a purpose, it's missing some of that magic when it's all put together. And there's a reason why whole plant cannabis is recommended for cancer. It's doing more than just 1 or 2 compounds can do by themselves. I work in CBD, and I can tell you it does not work the same as if it's all put together. And so what I mean by all that is that, like you said, people are predicting based on what we know, but it's still only a portion of the full picture. But we succumb to that primitive instinct as humans for glory. And I do this too. When I see things pop up in the UFO field, and I think that I know, I'm like, man, I know this is going to happen. I know this is going to happen. There's this compulsion, this overwhelming, compelling nature to wanting to claim this will be the way it is because I want to be the one to have called it out. I want to stake my name on this. I want to be like, I know this is going to happen, so I'm going to put my name on it right now. And I think that's what happens in every aspect is, all your senses, everything's telling you this is the truth. And so bit of ego gets into play and says, well, then put your fucking name on it so you'll go down in history. And that's what happens. And so, and you can, all the way back to the early days, the medieval times and the Vikings and all that stuff. What was it all about? It was all about glory. Yeah. Getting your names in the history books. And so I think that's the same now. It hasn't changed, but now it's with different things. It's with science, it's with technology, it's with status and influence. But yeah, I think that, again, I fall prey to the same thing, which is, I want to put my name on it because I want, when somebody else goes, wow, that was right. Who originally said that? I want them to look it up and be like, it's that dude named Ben.
The UFO guy.
The UFO guy. Yeah. So I think that and there's nothing wrong with that. But what happens is that when someone else comes along with either a better theory or a theory that better explains, that ego still stays. And we have a day and age now where people have power and that ego. So now they're able to say, I want you to squash that. I don't want that to come. I want to censor that. I don't want that to come out. Let's push that underground, or let's capture it for ourselves. Nikola Tesla is a great example of that. He was right all along. And what did they do? They discredited him. They stole his work. They backed a guy who stole his work. And then when he died, penniless and alone, they stole his research, and now it's in everybody's cell phone. And so but that's ego and power put together. Yeah. That's part of it. But I don't blame people for wanting to put their stake on things, but you got to be willing to concede to someone who actually has either a better theory or more facts, and that seems to not be the case anymore.
Before we end our conversation, let's shrink down from science to something much more supernatural. I feel like this is something that I've always wondered, that like when I was a kid, when I was growing up, there were a lot of people, and everybody used to be just about something. We were always thinking about ghosts and like different supernatural beings around us. The culture is filled with supernatural beings, stories. Every other person had seen something. like when I was growing up, especially around me, the people, my relatives and all that, I always grew up with stories like this. Even my friends and everybody that I know have seen, or they know somebody who has seen.
Yeah.
But now I have started to realize like this is becoming much more less. People are becoming much more sort of reality focused, much more scientific, much more how should I say, like vocal.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so things are a little bit changing. What about you? What's your point of view? Like, I mean, you are definitely talking to a lot of people. You have a big circle because you are doing podcasts based on that. I mean, my podcast is not this. I normally just get one or two people who are comfortable discussing about that. But what's your take on that? I mean, society around you, people you talk to.
Well, I am much on the other side of people that are going less rational. People are going less. I mean, I'm on UFO Twitter all the time, and these people are crazy. They're, again, I don't like to discredit personal experience, only because, again, everything that we've just said, based on our limited knowledge of the universe around us and how our mind really works, we cannot explain personal experience, and therefore we cannot dismiss personal experience. But at what point do we draw a line between personal experience, legitimate, and delusion? That's the hard part. And I tend to draw the line of delusion when people are selling something.
Mm-hmm.
They're selling something to somebody else, yeah. But I would say that in certain ways, it's very interesting to see people turn away from superstition, like, old world folklore type stuff and spiritual belief, towards a much more otherworldly belief. I've run into more people that don't believe in God, but believe in Bigfoot. That don't believe in religious, spiritual experiences, but they believe in aliens. And I don't understand that, because you're talking about, I mean, let's put it into perspective here. If somebody came to you and said, look, I believe that there is something out there that is looking out for me, that has my best interest in mind, and I talk to this individual, I commune with this person, all that stuff, without ever saying God, you're going to be like, what? You have an imaginary friend? What are you talking about? But then you have people that they come out and they don't say that they're talking to God. They say they're talking to aliens. They're galactic ambassadors. They're star seeds. They're Palladians, that have come down from, and now they can help you become a Palladian too. And it's just like, there's this new world. I'm going to call it a religion, a new world religion that's popping up that is all about just identity. Who do you feel like you are? Do you feel like you're an alien? Well, guess what? We can put you with somebody who's going to help you get in touch with your alien side. You know what I mean? It's all about that. And it's this. Alien? Really? I mean, for real, dude. I'm not even shitting you. That's real. Like, have you ever felt like you're from somewhere else? You might be a Palladian. Come join our course, and we'll walk you through exactly how to get in touch with your starseed origins. I'm not shitting you in the least. That's not even look. For real, dude. $29.99. So anyways, it's unbelievable. And so there's a lot of that. So what you have now is you have an ability to mass market. Everybody can market, right? Anything that they want, any way that they want. There's so many tools to market whatever you want to be. So I look at it as scientists, or science in general, have to get better about marketing, right? Because the new age wackadoos out there are winning, and it is frustrating. And I would say the same thing about spiritual people is, I mean, if you really want to, share your knowledge of the Bible and things like that, you got to be better at marketing, because these guys have got flashy colors and they've got TikTok. Great, galactic backgrounds. Yeah, get on TikTok for real. So I would say in my circles, it is pulling further and further. I call it the Me Too movement of ufology, because everyone that comes forward, every witness that comes forward with a story is immediately embraced as factual. Immediately. And then those of us that are like, I have a few questions, then they go, blasphemer, you know, and it's crazy, man. So I see these new religions popping up, all based on personal belief and personal experience. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but they're all selling self-help books. And so it is very interesting to see like a pull away from traditional religion and superstition and kind of a movement into all things celestial, all things galactic and universal. And because, I mean, the reality is you're never going to be able to disprove it.
Yeah.
You're never going to be able to disprove it. So it's a safe space. I mean, somebody can say they're Palladian from the galactic center and so, okay, you know, what am I going to say to prove that's wrong? You know, I can't. All the best I can do is just, you know, shake my head and be like, whatever, man, whatever. Okay. You know, so that's what I see. I see a lot of that. And then you have a third group, which is the people in the middle that are trying to actually get to truth. And they're sifting through all of this. And the piles are getting bigger and bigger and bigger that you have to sift through. And so it becomes a little overwhelming at times.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting to see. Like I said, the world's going to be a wild place in 100 years, dude. It's going to be a wild place.
That's true, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show, man. It was a really nice conversation. I feel like topics like this, we need a whole day.
Dude, I can go on and on. Hence why I have over 180 episodes of talking about just shit like this, because you could just go on and on and on and on and on about it.
I feel like
that's the fun of it.
Yeah, and I feel like we need to do a live stream about it, and we need to
that'd
really
be fun.
Get some people who are into this as a business. You know, like there's some people who are working for the government and stuff like that. I think that would be very interesting to bring those people along and get their point of view to really get the nitty-gritty out on the real world. You know, like of course everybody has perspective, like you said, everybody has its own reality. You can accept it or you don't accept it.
That's right. That's right.
Those are the people who I would say like are most closest to the truth more than us, because we are sitting on our desk and we are just researching on other people's work. But if somebody is doing their own work, I think that is something which is much more credible than you and me talking.
Well, I've interviewed people like neuroscientists, you know, about paranormal experiences, because I wanted to talk to a guy who's been in a brain. You know, 35-year neurosurgeon veteran that I was like, dude, you've literally spent 35 years digging in people's brains. What do you think about this? People that have been in the military that have written books. What do you think about this? You know, so I absolutely, I agree with you. I like to talk to people that have been in these worlds that other people are claiming that they have insight into, and kind of picking their brains about it. But yeah, it's fun though, dude. It's fun. Yeah.
All right, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. And until next time, I mean, I have like a few really interesting topics for you as well.
Oh, fun. Yeah, dude. I'm always down. All
right, man. Have a nice day, man. Right. Thank you so much.
All right, dude. You too.
Cheers.
Bye.
See ya.